Welcome back to System Prompt. It's episode number
No,
15,
he's gonna do it.
Peter.
Stop it.
It's episode number 15. We made it 15 episodes. Can you believe this?
Five more.
15
We're in the
episodes.
1%. Five more.
We're firmly in the 1%. It's just the facts. Welcome back to System Prompt. My name is Val.
Not Peter.
And we have a good one today. We're talking about hot topics in the AI industry. It's a hybrid of the news, stuff that we think is pretty cool. And I think we could jump right into it. We got to look at the beast in the room, Peter. Anthropic pulls Mythos and Fable 5. What are your thoughts, man? What's going on here?
Well, the first thing that I think of is I saw a headline the other day, and it was this company that's suing the American government for pulling Fable 5 off the market. And I'm sitting here going, it was only available for 3 days. How have you managed to set up your entire workflow around? But then there's other people that are like, oh my God, it was so amazing at finding intent, right? And then you have other people, like when you go further into the community and you start reading you go deep diving on Reddit and other things like that. One of the biggest concerns with Fable 5 in general was, are we going to be able to afford to use this as we're using like an Opus or a Sonnet or something like that, something to that degree? And with $10 per 1 million input and $50 for every million output, I was having a conversation with a guy and he's like, well, what if you're just using it for code review and it's, you're not actually getting that much output. And it's like, well, thinking actually counts as output. So, and what Fable 5 did extensively was a lot of thinking. So a lot of people were concerned with the costs, which is why I was very surprised to see this. I think it's a Canadian company that's suing the American government that centered their entire business around Fable 5. And I'm like, well, first of all, kudos to you for doing that shit, because immense amount of speed. Two, it really puts a lot of businesses on blast, and they're really having this thought now. Can we rely on these frontier models if on a whim they can get yanked that quickly?
You know what? I've heard of a podcast called System Prompt that has been talking about why you shouldn't rely on any frontier models for your workflow. Obviously, depending on your workflow, it seems like these guys may be onto something.
Yeah, right.
We may need to like, comment, share, and subscribe their videos because they're onto something.
Yeah, right. Please, if you do like and subscribe, we do try to do the best content we can. But
well, I guess before we go there, let's just for a quickly touch on how did Fable 5 actually get pulled? What's the real reason why it got pulled? What was the scare that the U.S. government had with the exposure of Fable 5 to the general population?
Well, you're hearing a lot of various reports, right? So one of the bigger things were that there was a jailbreak, and the jailbreak was specifically that you can ask, like if you tried to ask Fable 5, what are the vulnerabilities of this code, it wouldn't respond to you. It would go, unable to respond. I can't do that. But then if you asked it to actually fix the vulnerabilities in the code, it would go and source all the vulnerabilities. So then it would highlight those vulnerabilities. And as we spoke about in the previous episode, open source, enterprise is a lot of enterprise software is a wrapper for open source. It's, they wrap it, they package it for enterprise, and then they sell it. Now imagine, like we talked about, imagine something like Apache Iceberg has this big glaring hole that you can get the source code of in GitHub because it's open source, using Fable 5 to find a vulnerability, and now you have a vulnerability that you can use to exploit Databricks, Snowflake,
We're not recommending anity do this, just to be clear.
Well, you
but
can't.
This is what could happen,
right? Fable 5 is not there, but these are the reasons, right? I was having a conversation with another buddy of mine, and he's like, he put on his tinfoil hat, and he's like, the government's trying to ban models and this, that, and the third. And I was like, you have to understand that it is a really big concern when you have a model that can source these vulnerabilities as acutely as Fable 5 can, right? And then I saw this other report where you had some government contractors, was able to like source all of the nation's secrets in like 30 minutes or some shit like that. And that was insane. So people were just like, but on the flip side, Kalshi, the betting, the prop betting, it's a 60% chance that it's going to get released next week. So we'll see what happens there. It went from
And
6 to 60. So
and this is what I'm wondering. I'm wondering what Anthropic is doing. What what are they doing to try to monetize this model that they put all this money to into creating? And what does it mean for any other company who builds a Fable 5 like model? Do they pull all of them from the market? Is there Do we start talking about more of AI security and really trying to figure out what is this tool that we have in our hands, or was it all clever marketing? Well, we thought it was clever marketing, but it seems like that may not have been the case. So what do we do about making sure that these models are secure and that a couple bad actors don't go in there and really wreck things for a lot of people now almost anonymously because they can do this from anywhere in the world?
well, the big problem is capability is always catching up, right? So, before we even dive in and we talk about some of these different models that were released, like GLM 5.2, well, the creators of GLM says they're 6 months behind. And Q1 2027, they will have a Fable-like model that's out. Now, it's the ceiling now, but in 6 months to a year it becomes the floor. And that's the thing that a lot of people are scared of, right? Because when models are this accessible and it's the floor of what capability is, now how will you defend it with the same capability model, right? So you
Yeah.
have to, it's the same deal in cybersecurity, right? The black hatters have these capabilities, and the white hatters need to match the capabilities in order for the equilibrium to exist. It's the old cops versus robbers. There's X amount of
Right.
robbers, there's X amount of cops, and then there's a balance. There's that balance that's being made between the two, right? It's a consistent battle. Yin and yang, all the
Punch counter punch, and I guess
exactly.
the thing that makes me nervous is, okay, we ban it here, but then a Fable 5 competitor is created outside of the US. What do we do? And this is the conversation I think we're gonna have to start having a lot more throughout the end of this year, probably all of 2027 and beyond. What does that look like? Okay, we put on the guardrails, but what if somebody else doesn't want to? How do we how do we defend against them? How do we have for their punch? How do we counter punch? What are your
Uh,
thoughts?
uh,
A
it's
loaded question, I know, but
well, the problem is multifaceted, right? Because we're not just talking about when you're talking about in terms of that, you're not just talking about Fable 5. You're also talking about quantum computing being something more tangible that people can actually get their hands on. You're talking about AES encryption finally being able to be broken, and then if you layer on top Fable 5, quantum computing, and now you have this immense amount of processing power and reasoning power at your fingertips, and all of a sudden things look a lot less secure from the vantage point that a lot of especially security experts are starting to look at. Especially and they're ringing the bells, right? They're like so,
yeah, as they
what,
should be.
but the ironic part about ringing the bells is that Anthropic is sitting there going, "We need to regulate models. We need to regulate models," and then their model gets jacked, and they're like, "But why?" And it's like, "Well, you've been saying this shit, and now it's happened to you. What did you expect was going to happen? Whether or not you're out here, whether or not you're out here being sensationalized, using sensationalism to make sure you're front page news all the time." Right, but you're in this now. You're in a situation where you were the benefactor of the thing you were calling for, and it didn't really feel good for them, right? They didn't really
Yeah.
enjoy that.
This is not great news going into trying to IPO, by the way.
Yeah,
'Cause
no.
everybody's gonna give you more money to create models that do this.
Well,
You gotta you gotta bring down the temperature at some point in time and let people know that they have this thing under control.
yeah, Dario just keeps digging this hole. Did you see the most recent thing? I mean, not to deviate away from this whole thing, but the recent thing he's out there saying, if Anthropic can't make $1 trillion or if everything is going to crash and burn, and there's no way that this thing is that he's going to be able to continue. So I don't. The thing is, I don't understand what he, especially as he's going into an IPO. The market is very forward thinking. So what does he think is exactly is going to happen here? That people are just going to throw bags of money at him? Because I mean, look, all right, they are going to throw bags of money at him because
They
Fable is
are.
just that good. They are, without a doubt. People are going to spend the money. Uh, but a lot of people also aren't going to spend the money. Microsoft is not spending the money, right? We know that they're looking at
We'll cover
DeepSeek to
that.
cut costs, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna talk a little bit about that. Uh, we know SpaceX acquired Cursor. Cursor uses we know what Composer 2.5 is the base model. We'll talk about that. Uh, everywhere except Anthropicus is like the last Mohican here, in which they're trying to provide and call and then they're trying to pass the cost exponentially to people. OpenAI is trying to reduce their cost. Open source is matching capability, reduce cost. The only ones out here really that are screaming from the top of the mountain, going, "We need you to pay all this money. We need $1 trillion." Is Anthropic.
Yeah. One model, one great model, and a really fantastic harness disrupts their business model in ways that they can never imagine. And it's not here today, but that doesn't mean it can't be headline news in September, right around the time they're thinking about going public. And I mean, you mentioned a couple ones. Let's jump into the SpaceX one here, because they acquire Cursor, Composer 2.5. I heard is great, but we've also heard that it's a wrapper. And what are your thoughts on, first of all, on SpaceX making such a big move for essentially a fork of VS Code with an agentic coding agent?
Uh, I think I think Elon made a very clear statement saying we're not going to wait years to develop this. We can't figure this out. We need to buy it. We need to buy it, buy our option, which is fine. I mean, that's Elon's track record anyway. He buys the things, and whatever, good businessman, bad businessman, whatever you want to do. He seems to be buying winners. That's what he seems to do. I don't think that's going to change with Cursor. I think Cursor is one of the lowest hanging fruits, especially in the beginning of the agentic push, for people to touch it. People love it. People continue to use it. People have gone back to it, especially with Composer 2.5 coming out. People being very thrilled and they love how it's actually working out for them. But I say, Elon's charging $300 a month for Grok coding. Is that any good? I don't think I've heard anybody talk about it at all yet.
Sadly, man, and and I've used Grok in the past, but when I used Grok, there weren't that many models out, so it made sense. And the truth is, for some of the stuff I used it for, Grok was great, but then you know a couple months later, there's hundreds of models out, and now I have the pick of the litter, and it didn't remain at the top of the models I continued to choose for the tasks that I needed to complete. And I'm wondering how they're gonna convince the public to use it, even with the acquisition of Cursor. Because there's people that probably may choose 2.5, Composer 2.5 over Grok, unless Composer 2.5 becomes a Grok wrapper. But then that's a branding mismatch. So
Well,
I'm wondering what's the play with Grok.
I mean, even if even if Composer 3 becomes a Grok wrapper, Grok is a distill from ChatGPT, which he said in his case. So it's just a triple wrapped. It just, I mean, the really cool thing about Composer 2.5 is that it's able to cut costs. It's able to cut costs because it's a Kimi K 2.5 base. They trained on top of it, but using Kimi K 2.5 as a base was ingenious for them because they already had created a harness that can utilize the sub agents that Kimike 2.5 can actually go and spawn. Uh, and people love it. People, they can't get enough of it, and I think that's fantastic for them. I just it's I think it's I don't People are deviating away from Grok. Grok is probably the least talked about model of all the models that I've I've spent time talking to people about. And then you have the flip side of that, which is the GLM 5.2. Now, but I don't want to take it away from SpaceX. Uh, it's incredible that SpaceX is acquiring Cursor, SpaceX is leasing all of this inference to everybody else. They're leasing to Anthropic. They're going to lease. I forgot what the other
Google, they
Google.
signed a contract.
Google is. That's exactly. That was the one. They just signed a contract with Google for inference. Everyone is out of their mind for inference. I think the most interesting thing that's going to happen, especially as a price point, what happens when all these data centers get built and compute becomes more available? Because then you can't charge as much for it, right? The price drops down, or is it, or are we all going to end up paying the costs for these data centers, and they're just going to maintain the higher prices? I think that's going to be an interesting thing to actually to see, right? Because they're going to be paying billions of dollars for years uh, for these builds. But
This is a bit of a side note, and I know this
yeah,
is not on the docket, but now I'm thinking about it. What if he could pull off this data center and space thing? I don't. We don't have to go too far into it, but like now I'm thinking about it, and as you're talking, I'm like, as crazy as wonky as it sounds, this would be the ultimate chess move if he could do it. Um, because it could solve. I don't know how it's gonna happen. My knowledge in that space isn't nearly what it should be to talk in depth about it. But on the surface level, if he can actually pull this thing off, he like pretty much undercuts everybody.
yeah. Well, you have cooling. Your power comes from solar energy, which never actually decreases, right? You have a continual source of solar power orbiting the Earth. I think I think the better question is how are they going to get all the equipment out into space, uh, right?
Yeah.
Not especially when they have rockets not doing what they're supposed to be doing. You load a rocket with billions of dollars of equipment, launch it into space, only to have it explode or crash. You need something a little bit more consistent to be able to send out there and build. Is that going to happen? I don't know, man. I mean, we have so many data centers right now that are being built here on the homeland and across the world. What happens just when those are done? Okay, forget this talk about think about it this way. Let's say if NVIDIA RTX, right? M5, 128 gigabytes unified RAM. What happens when those become standard in people's hands and what people are actually utilizing the inference for actually decreases and these data centers actually lose money instead of actually gain money?
It's very interesting times, man. And the uncertainty is what is why it's so volatile, but and it's hard to know what's gonna work when everybody's trying everything at the same time. But yeah, time will tell.
Well, it's like what Joe Ewing he said, right? So the data centers are going to fail from these original builders, and people are going to buy them for cents on the dollar.
He did.
He-
Go you could go check a previous episode.
yeah,
And when he said it, he said that he told us that when he was saying this to, the people in his circles that they thought what he was saying was crazy, but it doesn't sound so crazy. It sounds something that's like something that's very plausible. And I'm just curious to see how these things play out. It's happening so fast. Today you look like a winner, and then 18 months from now, you're bleeding, almost putting up the white flag because the market has changed so quickly and you're trying to figure out a way to adapt. But in the spirit of adaptation, uh, we got to talk about some of these open source models as companies are starting to adopt these as real options over the premier frontier models. I've used GLM 5.2. I must say, man, I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
everybody. That's literally
I'm impressed.
everybody who uses that model is absolutely impressed with it. And
I'm impressed, and I don't say that often about models outside of the frontier. I've used Kimi K 2.5, good model, but in volume, I realize it's bad at tool calling. I don't know why, and it seems like they fixed that with 2.6 and 2.7, but for a while it had a run as a great model. Just wasn't great at that, so I couldn't give it that glowing review. But man, I've been cranking at it with 5.2, and there's the thinking and reasoning elite in terms of for an open source model. Obviously, cost makes it all make sense. I've been able to debug. I've been able to refactor code. I've been able. if you were to put a blindfold on me and tell me which model's doing all this work, I would be surprised if I knew it was 5.2. I would have thought, I can't say it's on par with 4.8 just yet. I need a little bit more time of testing. But can I say Opus 4.6? Absolutely. If you were to give me a side by side test, I would think, wow, this Opus, yeah, I'm definitely using Opus 4.6.
I mean, the crazy thing is that they said it was an Opus level. Like, GLM is not even touting this as being an Opus level model, and yet so many people are flocking to it because not only is it a fraction of the cost of Opus, it's delivering the quality that people would expect at a much but, and there's something to be said, right? If you're getting 90% of the way paying an eighth of what the right? It's an insane time, and you have Kimi K 2.7 code, which like you said, is fix a lot of the issues that they've had there. And just to give you Kimi K 2.7 code is a trillion parameter model. GLM 5.2 is a 744 billion parameter model, and GLM 5.2 is actually they're basically saying GLM 5.2 is basically at the frontier. That this is what's being reported on this model. They're essentially at the frontier. I mean, also the same people who made this model have also gone on to say that in in 6 months they can have a Fable like model available in open source, and that in itself is kind of insane. But it just goes back to the point where these and I don't like to attack Anthropic. I love Anthropic products, right? I love
They're
Claude
great,
Code.
dude.
I
They're
love them.
great.
But this
The best
idea
harness in the game right now,
yeah,
in my opinion, by far the best harness.
but their mode is shrinking, man. Like, it's shrinking around them. Like, I've heard rumors today, I've looked into it, and they've said, "Oh, they're gonna add Fable 5 to subscription. They're not gonna take it away. They're gonna let people use it and have a limited use, like something like a ChatGPT research agent. You have, like, 40 uses per month or whatever, what have you." They better because they need to keep people around. Um, I mean, look, Microsoft is not gonna go with Claude or an Anthropic model for its Copilot Cowork. They just said it's too much money. It's too much money. People aren't gonna pay for this. And they're like, we got to look at DeepSeek to be able to just cut these costs. And
I mean, can you blame them? I mean, think about it. Imagine
no,
you got some young, scrappy startup that's building a product to compete with your enterprise moneymaker, your enterprise cash machine. You're using Claude and you're token maxing. Your team are token maxing on Claude, and this young, scrappy startup is building their company around GLM 5.2, and their output is just as good as yours at a fraction of the cost. How can you compete in the long run? These are questions that you have to ask at the C-suite level if you're even having those conversations. And if
yeah,
you're not, oh man, you're in a boatload of trouble. If you sign this 12-month contract to go and burn all your money, you're not playing the same game, because there's a lot of startups that got it. They're like, hey, why are we committed to these frontier models at this cost when we can go get the same output at a fraction of the cost? We can have this thing run all day, all night, and it's giving us quality output. You can't compete in the long run, and they're they're one of the first, but they're not going to be one of the last. They just they made the tough decision first.
I mean, look, I work with open source models all day long. You know that, right? And the one thing that keeps people from really adopting these open source models in bigger buckets is that a lot of people are tied to using single models. Why are they tied to using single models? Well, when you end up in a situation where you're using multi models, right? Gemma 4 for its benchmarks and tool calling, I'm going to say it is absolute garbage in tool calling. I have no idea how it gets rated so high in the benchmarks. It must be some happy path that's going on, but it's absolute trash in tool calling. I'll say it. I'll say it. I'll say it again and again for anybody else who wants to hear. Right. And then you have like a Minimax 2.5, who's an interesting tool caller. GLM 5.2 is a fantastic tool caller. But the problem is all these models assume a different way of tool calling. Let's say DeepSeek, for example, uses DPSM, which is DeepSeek Markdown for tool calling. You don't know that before you dive in and you start dump unless you actually read the documentation. But nobody's reading any documentation anymore. They're just using AI to have the things explain it to them. So you get your first you get your first
Yeah.
hands on it, and then you're sitting there trying to build with it, and you're like, wait a second, this. what the hell is this? And that's how it's the model is expecting to see the tool call structure, right? And so you know, but that's just a matter of reps. Once you get enough reps under your belt, you actually get to see these things, and then you account for all these different things, and then you can actually set up a good system where it's routing, and then you further see how Anthropic's mode is just being reduced. Like you look at manage agents, right? Have you heard of manage agents? Like it's the most
I have.
amazing thing. If you've not tried out manage agents, there was a time where they would give you some free credits and you could run and use manage agents. It's amazing. It's routing. It's tool. You know what it is? It's a router specialist combo. It routes to the specific models. Where have we heard that before? It's freaking it's another harness.
Yeah.
It's another harness,
Go
right?
check another episode that we've had. When somebody goes and walks down that, what was it, a 14, 15 point checklist, and they mastered all those steps, that's your path to building a great harness. We should have called it Path to Building a Great Harness. Maybe we could go and edit the title of that video, because when companies, and there's tons of them that are working on this problem, they do that, and then you pop in a really good model. It's like, why? Why go and spend all that money when you don't have to?
Yeah.
And imagine you built around, like the Canadian company, you built around that one model, and then they just yank it. You know?
It must have been a crazy ass 72 hours for this company. I mean, I like I didn't even want to use Fable. People I was getting slayed and they were like, "Why aren't you going to use Fable?" And it's like it's just not cost prohibitive for me to use Fable. Like I can't get attached to it because if it goes to API only, I'm not going to use this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you gotta go rob a bank or something. You know?
right? Especially when you start reading about how much thinking output it actually goes through. Like one of the biggest negatives were that people were able to get to the same conclusion as 4.8 faster because Fable 5 spent more time thinking about it. It spends more time thinking about it because it's trying to source your intent to do the right thing for what it is you need to do, which is fine. But you're gonna pay for that. And we keep saying this over and over again, especially when it comes to autonomous pipelines and things of that nature, right? People are trying to sell you these autonomous agents are going to think through the problem and then do this thing for you. But what they're not saying is this is what this is actually going to cost you if you're using frontier models. Now, all of a sudden, you can have these loops and have these autonomous thinking models, or even not so much autonomous thinkers, just throw them in a pipeline and have them reason about a pipeline to do a specific pipeline better. But you can have them sit there and think considerably longer if you're using DeepSeek, if you're using GLM, if you're using Minimax M3, you're using Kimi K Code 2.7, because it's going to be a fraction of the cost of what you're paying for it when you're measuring it against 5.5 and you're measuring it against even 4.8, and
Yeah,
especially Fable 5,
yeah.
right? And I guess the base of what we're talking about here, you need to deviate away from the thought about building from around one specific AI model, right? And you need to have an understanding where building within in an environment where these models can exist, but right, and this is a big but because I see these LinkedIn posts, right, that they're infuriating for me to look at, and it's you can run this model for free.
Yeah. You could go. You got 2 minutes, brother. You could go. I know you. It's boiling. I can see it. I can see the steam coming off of
Well,
your head.
you know it's not free. You're
Go,
not GLM
go in, brother.
5.2. I've seen like freaking a dozen posts talking about let's run GLM 5.2. It's free. No, it's not free. What do you mean free? Run it locally for free? What are you insane? It's 744 billion parameter model. 744 billion parameter model. I'm not going to bore you by going into quantization, but you need to spend at least $8,000 to run a quantization 2, which Q2 for short, and even at that point, it's only 80% accurate. That's $8,000 spend. What do you mean for free? It's absolutely insane. Free. It's so infuriating when you think about it because these people are selling this thing to people and they're going, you can do this for free. Let me show you how. What do you mean for free? Get out of here for free. Even if you're using Open Router, you're spending money on tokens. You're either spending money on infrastructure, you're spending money on tokens. Nothing is free here, right? And everything that even if you're learning open source tools, It's not free just because it's open source. You're gonna sit there and learn. You're gonna be spending your time. Dude, look, just everything that has to do with anything, remove the free because none of it is free, right? Just-
Hey man, this is Peter, you guys. You know,
yeah.
he he feels very passionate about this, and I love it when you get these little rants in because I hear it all the time, and it's true. It's it's true on one level or another, and you feel better. You got it out.
My face turned all red. I hope people are listening and not why. I mean, I don't know, man. It's
I mean, hey man, to bring it home, you know, it's not just Peter and Val saying this. We're giving you examples of enterprise companies starting to consider this. Microsoft, they're the first to do it that we know of, that's been reported about, but they're not going to be the last. There's others that are, I'm pretty sure, if not doing the same thing right now, are in conversations to consider it. Um, don't wait. Don't wait to be the last person to even start to think about this. That means that you can start saving money today, having those conversations while still keeping the same quality output.
yeah,
Peter and I both love Anthropic. We use it all the time. I use Claude Code all the time. But what we're saying is that we are not beholden to just Anthropic. We use a multitude of models to execute the task based on what we need to get done, and we try to reflect the model usage based on the task and the value of the problem that we're solving should match the expenses that we're paying to solve that problem. And it's just further confirmation of what we've been talking about for many episodes. Peter's a little more animated in saying it, and it needs to be said because that's the way that it gets through. Um, but what are your final thoughts on here? We covered a couple cool topics.
uh, it's the shared thread, right? If we're gonna sit here and we're gonna bring a lot of these stories together, it's you cannot assume access to one model will remain permanent, right? We know this Canadian company is suing the U.S. I don't know what they think they're gonna get out of it. Maybe just front page news. Alternative models are improving quickly enough to be real substitutes, right? That's the other one. The big one in the room for me, especially, is owning the weights does not remove infrastructure costs, right? There's ways to do things. There's ways to not do things, right? In terms of Cursor, open models can become the foundation of highly valuable proprietary products. People need to remember that, right?
Yeah,
That's a big one.
maybe you may need to say that one again because
Open models can become the foundation of highly valuable proprietary products. And not okay, so Cursor just sold for $60 billion. They're a model. That's a Kimi K 2.5 base and a harness. There's not much else to say there. Microsoft model routing is becoming necessary for sustainable agent economics, right? And that's what it is, right? These are, it just keeps happening this way that we keep, and I feel like I'm on a mountaintop sometimes, and I'm screaming this over and over again. And I'm going, you have to start looking at this. You have to start looking at this, and then somebody finally bumps into me and goes, "Have you started looking at this?" And I look at them like they're absolutely insane because this is all I talk about to people.
legit.
It's like,
Legit.
I'm just wait, what? My head just explodes like right there on the spot. But it's nice to see because I think when open source is winning, I think we as consumers are winning, and that's uh, what is Cursor has one of the lowest hanging fruits there, and I don't want to go, but if Elon removes any free tiers or removes access to one of those models, I think consumers are going to lose. And yeah, I think my voice is done and my rant is over. And
You got it out. You got it out. I think they heard you in the back.
yeah,
Guys, this is episode number 15. we covered our hot topics. So what we consider our hot topics in AI news today. This is going to be one of a few, but it's definitely not going to be the last. We'll circle back. Let us know what you think. If there's any topics that you want us to cover, drop it in the comments below after you like, share, comment, and subscribe. And thank you again for joining us for System Prompt.
You guys have a great weekend, and we ain't going nowhere. Episode 20, we're gonna be in the top 1% of podcasts.
Let's go.
Let's go.